recording has started. There we go. Okay, perfect. So good evening, everybody. I actually forgot that tomorrow is a public holiday, which means that today we weren't going to get much of a class. But nevertheless, we are here. And today from I think I'll just start off with just a few announcements, okay? So you would have seen that I have shared all four, well, iSTARS 3 and 4, because 1 and 2 was already shared. I've shared all the iSTARS now, and I've given a hard due date, and I think it is the 6th of October, if I'm not mistaken, which means that every iSTARS starting from 1 right down to 4 is now due the latest 6th of October. The setting on the due date is set for that date at 23:59. So any iSTAR submitted after that time will not be marked or graded at all, and you will be losing scoring based on that. So I haven't started marking any of the iSTARs that came up just because I don't want to get confused on stuff that I've marked already and then additions have come into play. So in that last week, between the 6th of October and I would say give or take 5 days thereafter, all of the marking will be concluded and all of the iSTARs will then be shared on BC Arc as well as under your student portal, because I'll have to capture all of the results at the same time. Your assignment 2, firstly, assignment 1, well done. Congratulations to everybody. I think the results from an average perspective was really good. So it does show that you guys have been paying attention, not only to lectures, but as well as the national support session that we've been having. And I think that has really been a great help, especially from this semester, going through every question, understanding whether, or going through it so that you understand what's happening and how to answer the question and sort of the marking rubric, etc. We will be having another national support session for assignment 2, and that will be the last week or the last live lecture prior to the due date. And I think it sort of gives you a 2-week time frame, if I'm not mistaken, to play with. So you have some time to just, brush up on that. I think your assignment is due towards the middle-ish of October. So you do have some time. So we'll go through that that assignment, national support session and PACER closer to that time. Okay. So for today specifically, we're going to go over Learning Unit 6. So as far as the PACER is concerned, we are 100% on track right now. It is working for us in terms of the time frame. The last one that we had done was the Learning Unit 5. I just want to see if I can pull out the PACER just so that we have more of an understanding. You may not see it because I don't think I'm sharing that portion of it. So today is the 23rd of September. We're at a Learning Unit 6. So I did all of the Learning Unit 5 in our last lecture. So that covered theme 1, 2, and 3. Learning Unit 6 will be covered today. Learning Unit 7, I will cover it, a portion of it in the recording and then a portion of it in the live lecture. Your assignment is due on the 20th of October. So on the 7th, on the 7th of October, record live. Yes, on the 7th of October is when we will have your national support session for your assignment 2. So it gives you more or less almost 2 weeks to play with in terms of submission. And by then, all of your iSTARs would have been concluded already. And then we have a recording for Learning Unit 8. And then Learning Unit 9 is a live lecture, and then 10 is recording. So the Learning Unit 9 being a live lecture, so that's on the 21st of October. I would probably use only half the session to go over content. The other half of the session I'm going to use as a national support session, predominantly focused on the examination. I hate doing national support sessions as a recording because I do not want to be talking to myself. Unfortunately, I want to be present with you so that you can fully understand where I'm going with in terms of the questions as well as the pacer. And if you do have any questions, I'm there to answer it there and then. So just take note of these dates, and I'll just repeat myself one more time. Your final date for your ice toss hard date is the 6th of October at 23:59. Your national support session for assignment 2, where we're going to go over exactly how we had done for assignment 1, question by question. I tell you where to look for it, etc. And we'll go through some of the key points, like referencing sort of what I saw in assignment 1, and not to make the same mistakes again, if that makes sense. So that support session will take place on the 7th of October. So I'd use the first 30 minutes of the session to go over the um, learning unit 7, whether it's a theme 3 that we're doing. And thereafter, we'll do our national support session for assignment 2. So that's the 7th of October. On the 21st of October is our last live lecture, which means that we are doing Learning Unit 9 on that particular day. I will use half that session to do Learning Unit 9 and the other half of the session to do a national support session for your examination. Okay, so please make sure over the next few live lectures that you are present, especially it actually is the only 2 live lectures that we have left for the rest of the semester, which is the 7th of October and then the 21st of October. Please make yourself present because it's very important sessions. It's assignment 2 and exam sessions, basically. I would rather have focus on that because that's where you are gaining your momentum. The content, I can bring it down in as layman's terms as I possibly can. And, we can break it down in a good 30 to 40 minutes. So please just make sure that you are present for those sessions. Okay, so today we're going to be doing Learning Unit 6, and we're going to push out Theme 1 as well as Theme 2 in this particular session. Um, the next week's session will be Learning Unit 7, which will be a recording, okay? So our session today is going to be focused on MRP systems. Okay, you probably heard this in the office, in the workplace, or if you did economics or business studies or something in school. But MRP is Material Requirements Planning System. And the textbook definition of this is production planning, scheduling, and inventory management that's used to manage a manufacturing process. So basically, what it is, and sort of like the goal of what an MRP system is that there's enough material and there's enough products that's available for your production process, as well as what delivery you have to do based on your schedule, while you try and minimize your raw materials or your inventory levels, as well as try and have the most efficiency with regards to your production cost. So I know it is a mouthful, but it's basically a system or a process that a lot of manufacturing businesses have in place where they can control their inventory as much as possible. So, but also make sure that there is enough material or raw material or WIP, work in progress, that is available in order for you to continue your production process. So I think as we go along, you'll sort of start to familiarize yourself a little bit more with what MRP basically is. So some of the key functions of MRP is is inventory control. So when we look at inventory control, it basically means that you want to make sure that you have the right materials available at the right time, especially when it comes to production process. You don't want any shortages of any material, and you also don't want any excess stock, because I think I sang the song in first semester as well. Your cash sits in stock. So if you have cash, excess stock, you have cash that's now sitting in there, cash that you could be using for other investments, tech, innovation in your business, etc. The other function is, or the next function is production planning. And it's as it says, when you say production planning, it basically assists with planning what your production schedule is going to be by making sure you know what products needs to be manufactured and by when you need it to be manufactured based on what your customers orders are, or if you don't have customers orders and you're working on some sort of demand forecast, you have an idea of what should be planned first within the production process. Then the next one is scheduling. So MRP basically, when we look at scheduling, it basically calculates exactly when your materials or different components are needed for that specific production. So your orders can be placed to make sure that it's available when it's needed. So you're basically scheduling when you would require those specific items that's required for production. Then we have something called a bill of material, so a BOM. So you're going to see this pop out throughout this lecture. You're going to see it in your textbooks, all of that. And basically, what a bill of material is a breakdown. So it's quite a detailed breakdown of the product structure. Basically lists all of your materials, all of the components, everything that is required to make a finished product is listed on your bill of materials. So we'll go through it later on in today's session, but just so you have a very high level understanding of what a BOM is. Then the last one is lead time management. So what your material requirement planning system basically helps to do is manage your lead time when it comes to ordering material. So they must arrive when you need it to arrive. It doesn't cause any delays in your production or your manufacturing schedule. So you need to have quite a close watch on the lead time management. So if you can see all of the five that I already spoke about now, it's sort of interlinked with each other. Everything is about getting it as a just in time, making sure you don't have too much of stock, running as efficient as possible. And this is what material requirements planning systems in any business helps to do. I mean, the MRP system can be different from an industry like a automotive to a textile industry. Everyone uses different sort of ways of how an MRP should be done. But the basis of it and the key functionality is these five things that I've mentioned now. Okay. Is there any questions so far? Okay. Then we're going to go through a little bit on conditions of MRP. So I'm trying to touch base on everything from a learning unit perspective so that you have all your bases covered. So when we're talking about the conditions of MRP, basically the way the MRP functions, um, it needs to be as effective as possible as a full-on system within a business. So the conditions itself makes sure that the MRP can use your inventory the best possible way. So from an optimization perspective, from a scheduling perspective, and then also from a procurement process perspective. So how much of material you should be buying, when you should be buying it, etc. So some of the conditions are, the first one is accurate demand forecasting. So in order for you to have a good MRP, you need precise demand forecasting in order for you to determine how much of production you need for that future period. Maybe it's a seasonality, um, but you need to understand what the demand is going to be. If your demand is unpredictable or it fluctuates too much, then your MRP system itself can struggle to schedule your production the best way that it possibly can. So you need clear visibility on where your forecast is sitting. If you're working on customer orders, you need visibility on the orders. If there's any seasonality, like different trends, like maybe it's uh, Christmas or Easter, Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day, etc. If you work in an industry that features majority of those seasonalities, and also market forecasts. All of these are absolutely critical in order for you to have a good working MRP. The next one is having a well-defined bill of material. So your MRP system relies very heavily on having a detailed bill of material, which basically wants to outline all of your raw materials, any components, anything that's needed to manufacture a specific product. The bill of material must be up to date, it must be correct, it must be precise, in order for you to basically properly calculate what your MRP is going to be. If it's inaccurate, you can have a lot of production delays, you can have a lot of wastages because you now have too much of raw material and you cannot produce because you don't have the demand for it, or you don't have enough raw material and you now need to produce because you have a demand for it. So whichever way it swings, your bill of material needs to be as accurate as possible. Oops. Then we have stable production plans. So your MRP works the best when the environment where your production is being based are stable. And that I'm talking from a scheduling perspective. There's not much disruption when it comes to your manufacturing or your production process. If there is a lot of changes in that process or in that plan, the MRP system will struggle to keep up with the changes, which means that you're going to have a lot of inefficiency in the business. So whatever that production plan or production schedule is, it needs to be, you need to stick to it in order for your MRP system to function efficiently. The next one is accurate inventory data. So also for one of the conditions for MRP is for this to function, um, you basically need real-time inventory data. The system needs to be accurate, to have that accurate information on what your current stock levels are going to be, what you have in production from a work in progress, what is the lead times for items that you've ordered, like from a raw materials perspective. If you have poor inventory data or poor or inaccurate inventory data, it can cause the system to generate a lot of incorrect production and also procurement orders. It's now pushing you to say, I want 10 wheels or 10 tires, and you actually don't need it. And it pushes you to an ordering system or a procurement system that is not necessary at that time. Okay. Then we have reliable supplier performance. So the MRP itself um, is very dependent on getting orders from a raw material perspective or a component perspective on time, from various suppliers that you would order from. If the suppliers delay or they don't deliver for whatever reason, the MRP system is very heavily disrupted. So your MRP system works with accuracy, and it works best when your suppliers are dependable. Um, if they can meet the delivery schedules, if they can meet all the expectations that's set out in the offset or on the onset, then your MRP will function precisely. Then it's integration with other systems. So a lot of times in a lot of businesses, MRPs is often part of a broader system like an ERP system or a SAP system. Okay, so these are a lot of the systems that many businesses use, whether you're in a logistics space, a manufacturing space. A lot of businesses use it from a broader perspective, purely because it allows for a lot of integration with departments. Whether you're sitting in procurement or HR or finance or whatever it is, you're able to have access to what has been ordered, or what you need for business continuity at the end of the day. So it does function best when it's integrated with other systems. And it also allows the MRP to have some sort of access to data across the entire business. Okay, so whether your production planning now aligns with another business process, and then that aligns with your delivery process. So everyone basically needs to talk to each other through one broader base system. Okay. Then we have consistent lead times. So MRP systems a lot of the time assume that your lead times for like purchasing or procuring materials, or different components for your production process are consistent. So if you're saying that your lead time to purchase raw material one is going to take you 5 days, your MRP system is reading it as 5 days. Okay, so if your lead times fluctuate massively, if they're unpredictable, it becomes very difficult for that system itself to schedule, your production process, or to schedule your order procurement ordering process efficiently. So it just tends to not run as efficiently as possible. And then the last one is skill personnel and effective training. So you obviously need people that are skilled enough to understand the system, understand your procurement process, and also have a very high level overview of the different integrated systems or integrated departments that fall within the broader base system. So you need proper training. There needs to be ongoing education, especially for people that are critical to using this type of system, so that if there is any changes and deviations from what the MRP system should look like, those changes are made and it's conditioned within the MRP itself. So basically, to bring everything together, especially when we're speaking about the conditions of the MRP, it needs to be in a very well structured environment where it's predictable, it's stable, the information is accurate. You also have very reliable, relationships with suppliers. When all of these conditions are met, you the benefits from having an MRP system is very wide. You can reduce a lot of wastage in your business. You can optimize all of the resources that you have because you're now running purely off a schedule. And you can also improve your production efficiency. So your production process runs a lot more smoother. You can control a lot of elements as opposed to you not being able to control it. Okay. Then we go on to the different objectives of MRP, right? So, and I said this just now as well. What do you want to get out of an MRP system is making sure you have as much efficiency in your business as possible. You want to reduce as much cost, and you also want a good production schedule, ultimately leading to a good product delivery. So some of the objectives are making sure that you have material availability. Okay, so whether it's from a raw material or a component perspective, all of this is now available from a production side. You don't want to have too little material or too much or excessive material. You want to minimize your production, your inventory levels. And by this, you just want to reduce any sort of excess that you have, especially when you are purchasing or producing anything, to prevent any sort of overstocking. You want to optimize your production schedule, um, you know, to bring in as much efficiency as possible. You want to reduce idle time, especially if you're working with machinery and laborers, etc. Also lead to storage issues. You don't want any storage issues. You don't want to risk any product being obsolete as well. So you want to optimize the production schedules. Or you want to minimize the inventory levels as much as possible. Production schedules, you want to make sure that it's as efficient as possible. Your customer services, you want to improve this, making sure that your products are manufactured on time, they delivered on time. Your MRP can help to meet those customers' demands. They can help to improve customer satisfaction. And also, at the end of the day, it's all about brand image and brand reputation. You want customers coming back for more. So by giving them the good service, they tend to come back for more. Then you want to reduce production. That's cost, not ost. You want to reduce production cost as much as possible, minimizing waste, increasing the efficiency. So everything that we've spoken about already, you want to reduce as much bottlenecks as possible in the business, and your MRP system is the one to do that. And then improve your workflow and your resource utilization. The MRP provides a very structured approach, especially when it comes to how you're going to plan or how you're going to control your production process itself. So you're making sure that you have the resources available, whether it is a labor or machinery or anything from a material perspective. Okay, then the next one is what we call dependent demand of MRP. Okay, so when we're talking about the dependency of demand, it means that the demand for one item depends on the demand for another item. Okay, and I know it sounds a little bit complicated, but a lot of times your dependent demand occurs in a manufacturing process, where the demand for like certain raw materials is directly tied to the production of a finished good. Like for example, sorry, like for example, if you have to look at a manufacturing of a car. You want to imagine that a car manufacturing company produces a specific model of a vehicle. Let's say it's a sedan. The demand for the different components varies. So, whether it's an engine or a tire or a seat, all of this is dependent on how many cars the company wants to produce. So, by using this, we look at what is the bill of material that you need for one car. So if you have to look at a car, right? Let's say it's a BW Polo, right? You need what's the bill of materials? All your components is all your raw materials that you need to now produce this BW Polo. So you need an engine, you need tires, so four tires to be precise. You need two front seats, you need two back seats, you need a steering wheel, you need four doors, you need a windshield. Okay. So that is obviously the basics of it. If the company can produce 200 cars in the next month, the dependent demand that you're looking for can be calculated by just taking all of those numbers that you now need for one car and multiplying it by 200, because ultimately you need 200 cars. So in this specific example, you can see the demand for each component, whether it's an engine or a tire or a windshield or a seat or a steering wheel, each one is dependent on the production of the finished car. So you have an MRP system that would use this information to ensure that the right quantity of every single component that I've mentioned is now ordered and it's available when it's now time to assemble the car at the right time when the car is needed, based on what their production schedule is. So I hope you get a little bit more of an idea of what a dependent demand is. I don't want to go over the theory of it because I don't think you're even going to understand. I mean, that first two lines that I gave you, you probably were like a little bit lost. So I think putting it into an example really illustrates what dependent demand basically means. Okay, so we're going to go over three different types of it, and I'll explain it as we go along. So the first one is also part of dependent demand of MRP. So now you understand about the car manufacturing, etc. So what is management of demand? So once a business basically manages um, not only the orders that are received from the customer, but also understands what your forecasted demand is going to be, this is now known as management of your demand. Okay, so if you're getting 100 orders for a particular item, let's stick with cars. Okay, if you're getting 100 orders for a vehicle, a VW Polo, from customers, but you also know that, let's say, the interest rate is dropping or the inflation rate is dropping, people have more disposable income, they are can get loans maybe a little bit easier. Whatever that case may be, you can now forecast what that demand is. So let's say your demand is now 50, but your actual customer order is 100. You now need to know you're putting in 150 in terms of managing what your demand order is now going to be. So one cannot exist without the other. Therefore, a lot of businesses need to make sure that correct processes are put into place so that they can speak directly to that specific target market so that their forecast in terms of demand is as accurate as possible. So whether it means keeping an order book or every sale that's being entered is like captured onto an ERP system, you want to forecast the demand as easily as possible. you also want to make sure that you are promising those orders to the customer within a reasonable lead time that you can expedite at the end of the day. Then we're going to go on to management of customer orders. So customer orders are basically firm orders that has been placed with the business by customers. So how I spoke to you about the 100 customers that placed the orders, and then the 50 was the sort of forecasted demand. Management of customer orders is just that 100. Okay. These orders are placed in your system via an ordering system or an order book, or for whatever reason, whatever system the business basically has that manages and maintains their order. This is where it's coming from. Okay. Then the last one is order variation. And order variation basically happens when a customer changes their mind about what they want at a very short notice. So, for instance, think about you ordered a new dress, for instance, and before you decided you wanted it delivered, you decided that you don't want it anymore. So you now want to inform the place that you ordered it from, maybe it's a .com website, that you don't want it anymore. So this is typically what happens in both, whether it's from a manufacturing perspective or a service industry perspective, but order variation does change very often based on people's tastes, needs, wants, etc. Um, and that basically is dependent demand for when we're talking about MRP. So pretty simple, pretty laid back, pretty easy to understand as well. Okay. Then we want to go into the inputs of MRP. So also remember this input of MRP system. It is pretty important. You never know when it may come out. So we have the MRP system, which is what we've been going out on the last 5 slides, all right? And you have 3 basic inputs. So this is what's now going into the system. The first one is your MPS. So your MPS is basically your actual schedule, and it's one of the most primary inputs of your MRP system. So the demand forms one of the most important part when we're talking about the MPS, and it's very important when it comes to planning and controlling from a manufacturing or a production perspective. And the 3 elements here is demand forecast, which we spoke about, customer orders, which we also spoke about when we're talking about dependency, and then any other demands, whether it's a variation, order variation from a customer, whether there's a seasonality change, whatever the case may be. But this is where your primary input now comes into play. Okay, and all of this now forms, um, uh, basically forms a whole ball of items that informs your production process about what needs to be manufactured. So a lot of planning is now done based on the demand of what these products are that you're now going to be processing or manufacturing. And you then need to understand, what requirements do I need in order for me to produce those items or those orders? Then it takes you to input 2, which is your bill of material structure. So here it's your product structure, your product design. You need to understand what items is required in order for you to build that finished product or for you to produce that finished product. So every single item that's required is then put through into your bill of material, and then it's fed into your MRP system itself. So it needs to be accurate as possible, up to date as possible, and it basically forms a big portion of where your ordering system is now coming into play. And then we have, so there's different types of bills of material, okay? So some of it is, you know, from a modular perspective. So modular bills, you can read this up from your textbook as well. And they use for products with modular design, meaning that all the parts that's required to manufacture that specific product is subdivided into different modules that can be change or it can be replaced whenever it is required. Okay. So whether it is a stove, for instance, like you have the oven, you have the door, you have plates, all are different modules of the finished product, which is a stove. All right. So you have that. And then you have phantom and planning bills, um, which is your planning bill specifically is used when you're planning what product you want. Okay. Because the product doesn't really exist as yet. It's an idea that you've now trying to generate in your head. So you now need to understand what items do you need, what's the production process going to be done, what assembly process is going to happen, how much of product do you need, etc. So those are sort of like the main ideas of where your bill of materials sit in. And then the last one is accurate inventory records. Okay, so this is the third and final output of your MRP system. So your inventory record specifically is all your information, excuse me, regarding the status of your items that's needed within a specific period of time. What is the different requirements for each part? When did you receive it? How much of stock do you have on hand? So anything that involves a raw material, a work in progress, or a finished product sits in your inventory records. Okay. And that's basically the three main inputs that you require from an MRP system. So it's very simple. Input one, MPS from a scheduling perspective. Input two, bill of material from a structure in terms of what raw material is required to make a production. And input three, inventory levels, raw material, work in progress, finished goods, and understanding what do you have on stock, and it needs to be as accurate and up to date as possible. Okay. Then we have a structure of an MRP system. So a lot of times your MRP system is technologically advanced, it is, automated or computerized, etc. And that's basically what the system then would show you, right? So you need obviously as accurate information as possible. So let's go through some of the terminologies, all right? So the first one is gross requirements. And this is basically the total demand that can be expected for any item, whether it's a raw material, a work in progress, or a finished good within a specific time. So how much of this item do you actually need from a demand perspective? Scheduled receipts. This is open orders. So you have it's still outstanding. It means the orders has been placed at your suppliers, but you haven't received it as yet. Projected on hand means that the quantity that is expected, the quantity basically is the expected amount and that is available at the beginning of a period, right? So what do you now have on hand? Net requirements is the exact amount that will be needed in a specific time period, whether it's also a raw material or a semi-finished good. Planned order receipt is the amount of material that you are expecting to receive at the beginning of a time period by a supplier, for instance. Planned order releases is the amount of the item that your business, from a production perspective, plans to order in a specific period. Okay, but we're going to go through it now. So I know it sounds overly complicated, but I think this example may help a little bit, right? Well, I'm hoping it does. So in this specific example, it's a table manufacturing example. So this specific business or company wants to produce 100 wooden tables within the next month, right? So let's say 30 days. Each table needs different components, right? And the demand for the component is dependent on the number of tables that needs to be now produced. So take us back to our VW Polo example. So in your master production schedule, so input one of your NPS specifies that the number of wooden tables that is required in this case is 100 tables over the next month. So we now know our MPS is 100 wooden tables. Input 2 is a bill of materials. So the bill of materials shows the breakdown, and the breakdown is one tabletop, four legs, five screws, one varnish can per table. Your inventory status records tracks the sort of available components and the raw materials. So before you even think about doing any sort of production, the company checks how much of inventory they have, and they then tell us that they have, let's say, uh, 20 tabletops, 100 legs, 200 screws, 10 varnish cans, etc. And I'm just spitballing, obviously, numbers right now. So based on that, using your MPS, using your bill of materials, and then using your MRP systems, you're able to calculate how much more you need in order to produce 100 tables. So there's a lot of addition and subtraction that's then required. So you look at every single item on what's on hand and what do you need now to take it forward. So your planned order release basically will tell you how much more to order. So if you're now outstanding, let's say 10 tabletops and 100 legs and 100 screws and 10 varnish cans, these orders are the ones that are scheduled based on what your timeline is going to be, and also based on what the lead time of the delivery of those products are from your supplier itself. If the tabletop takes 2 weeks to come and your legs take 1 week to come, the system the MRP system itself ensures that those materials are ordered in time to when production is basically planned. Okay, so that's basically how the MRP system works. So it's it's fairly easy to understand. There is examples. Please go through these examples in the textbook specifically so you have a little bit more of an understanding. But the table scenario explains it quite nicely, as well as the car manufacturer one explains it quite nicely. So just gives you a little bit more insight of exactly what an MRP is. Okay, then we're going to go on to the outputs of the MRP system. So there's a lot of information that can be available from an MRP side. Okay, so it's now what is the system spitting out to us? So in this specific type, you can have two different reports. Number one is a primary report, which is where your main reports are now being produced. So whether it comes to production planning, inventory control, all of these are part of the primary reports. So the output of the MRP system provide schedules for maybe you have a future material usage, anything from an effectiveness perspective. That's the output of that MRP report, or the output of that primary report within the MRP system. Anything you want to change, um, from an existing order perspective, these changes, can be like due dates or delivery dates or what quantity the customer is ordering, all of these things, how much of orders you've got planned in the system and how much of orders you've released in the system. So these are your main reports. Your secondary reports, which is optional reports, are basically more from a performance control perspective. How is the whole system performing? If you have a production manager or a manufacturing manager or an ops manager, they can measure any sort of deviation to the plan based on the secondary report or your optional report. So a lot of the deviations are then highlighted. If delivery dates are not being met, or you've got stockouts, you don't have enough raw materials, um, you know, um, and also from a cost perspective, it can be managed. So that's from a reporting perspective. The aspects of MRP specifically is basically when you have somebody that's very well versed within that MRP system that you have in your business, um, they can they can be looking at stuff like your inputs, your structures, your outputs of the MRP system, which is everything that we had gone through. So your three inputs, where your structure is sitting from an MPS side, as well as what your outputs are from a reporting perspective. Um, they also need to look at other sort of aspects. And the first one is safety stock. If you have a good MRP system, no business, especially if you have a dependent demand, should hold any safety stock that is below the finished product level. The reason is that a lot of businesses and a lot of management should be able to predict what the usage is, for the items that's needed in order for you to produce your final product. So from a safety stock perspective, we know what safety stock is. We don't want any shortages. And if there is a bottleneck that occurs within the business, especially from a manufacturing side, um, how do you now push that process, even if it's a slower process, to make that production process work forward and move on. And then the next one is lot sizes. So when we're talking about lot sizing, it's making sure that you're selecting the correct size in terms of the batch of products that you want to manufacture in order for you to meet what your customer's demand is or what your demand forecast is. You don't want to over procure or overproduce or over manufacture. You want to be able to produce based on lot sizes. So if you are manufacturing a car, for instance, you want to run your process as 10 vehicles at a time, as opposed to just running simultaneously and pushing out product. Then you have excessive amount of product that now doesn't meet your forecast and also doesn't meet your demand. And you're sitting with stock on hand, which is cash on hand. Okay, so that's just the aspects of MRP. And I think we're almost at the end now. Okay, so then we're going into the broader base system. So a lot of times MRPs sit in broader base systems like an ERP, which is an enterprise resource planning. ERP systems are very, very common in multiple industries and multiple businesses because it's so comprehensive and it can take the amount of um, sort of from a stability perspective and a different structure perspective, it can be built according to that specific business. You want to be able to manage different processes, whether it's finance, procurement, sales, human resources, production, HR, supply chain, everything in one system. You don't want to be moving from system to system to system. Everybody needs to be speaking the same information. So when you have an ERP system, it basically gives you a very centralized idea or view of your data, of your processes, and it also helps you to build from an efficiency perspective and also make the right decisions. So some of the features are integration of business function. So you're linking basically all of your departments that we mentioned, like finance, procurement, HR, inventory, everybody now together, and they have seamless data sharing, they have collaboration between departments. There's no specific silos working in business itself. You have a centralized database, making sure that the data is up to date, it's consistent. Example, you have like sales in a sales module, it automatically will update people in inventory, in finance, in production. You know, this is the amount of orders that we have, etc. Then you have real-time data processing. So because ERP systems processes the data in real time itself, it has instant updates, whether it's on a specific order or on a specific payment of an order or what your production schedule is going to be. So you can have a lot of agility within your business. Then you have automation. So especially when it comes down to processes that is quite manual or repetitive, for instance, like payroll or tracking an order or how you report from a financing perspective. Maybe it's a Power BI report. So when you automate it, especially from an ERP side, it reduces a lot of errors that you may see if you have to physically, manually have to do the reporting yourself. Then you have scalability and customization. So because ERP systems can be so customized, um, different blocks are sitting in different areas, like a sales block or a finance block, etc. But everyone speaks the same language. They can different businesses can implement specific functions that they need an ERP system to do, whether to scale up, when the business grows, or drop down if, if something happens, and customize it because there's a unique process or a unique functionality that they want to see from an ERP system. This is how it would work. So I've got here an example of an ERP. So just to give you a very high level example or overview of what an ERP system is, and I would urge you to look up what ERP systems are and watch a few videos on how different industries use different ERP systems and how it works for them, and the integration and the collaboration between departments. So, in this particular example, let's take a manufacturing company, for instance, that uses the ERP system in its entirety. Okay. So, the sales team, for instance, will put in an order, let's say for 100 units of a specific product. The ERP system checks that inventory to see if there's enough raw materials that's available. If there isn't enough raw materials available, then the procurement process now comes into place where they generate different orders or purchase numbers for that raw material that is now not available. Then you have your production process or your production module within your ERP that schedules the manufacturing process. You have your finance that then records the sales order from a billing perspective. Then you have your warehousing module that updates the stock level once your production process is now done and you're now shipping it out. And then you have your HR process, which tracks your how many hours your worker has or your employee has done from a payroll perspective, for maybe it's overtime or extra credit, whatever the case may be. So you can see how different functionalities are working in collaboration but using one system to do it. So it's just streamlining operations. It's making sure that the entire business works off one data set and you're not working in different silos in the business. Okay. And then I think we are down to the last one, which is the reason why electronic commerce or e-commerce is now introduced here is because it's become so advanced and people have really taken to e-com specifically post COVID. It significantly has impact how ERP systems are, and are being used right now. Um, there's a lot of changes in how businesses operate and how the integration happens across different functions. So we all know, I'm not sure if we all know, but e-commerce specifically is the buying and selling of goods and services over the internet. Okay. So it has a lot of integration with ERP systems. It's brought a lot of opportunities for a lot of different businesses that have previously had challenges. So it's now we're talking about how e-commerce and ERP systems are then, speaking to each other. So the first one is integration of front end and back end systems. So e-commerce platform, the front end of it is where us as customers go onto a website like a Takealot, for instance, and we place our order, we make our payment. The ERP system is what sits at the back end of the system. They now do checking of inventory, order fulfillment, payment, logistics, everything else that ensures that you get your product on time. The ERP system then make sure that happens. Then you have, in conjunction with that, inventory management. Because e-commerce works 24/7. I mean, you could be scrolling at midnight ordering something off a website, but you want to make sure that if you chose a black dress on a specific website, that needs to be in stock. If there's no stock, it needs to say sold out. So ERP system guides it in the back end so that there's real-time visibility. If I place the order and there's only one item left, and I place the order and you place the order at the same time, one of us is lucky to get it because the next one's going to come in and say, it's sold out or whatever the case may be. You want to prevent as much back orders. You want to prevent stockouts. You want to prevent overselling to customers. And real-time inventory management does do that based on them having visibility in the back end of inventory. Then you have automation and order processing. So e-commerce specifically, a lot of the transactions generate high volumes of orders. So it needs a lot of automation in the back end, especially from an efficiency perspective. This is whether you are updating stock, whether you are sending out invoices to the customer, whether you are organizing any shipping information to print out a shipping label or an e-label. All of this needs the back end from an automation and order processing perspective. A lot of logistics companies now have developed a lot of APIs that integrate the back end of an ERP system that allows the information from the front end be pulled to the back end to be pulled through to your logistics provider, which is amazing. So it's a click of a button and things just happen. A label's then printed, a collection is booked, etc. Enhanced customer service. Um, your customer basically wants to have a good experience when they're going onto your website. So you want to have like order tracking, the right pricing. If you're not including shipping, excluding shipping, your front end needs to show all of these things. And all of this is now supported and powered by ERP systems. Then you have data synchronization and analytics. So especially when there's a lot of information, whether it's different seasonalities, different trends, different customer behaviors. Your data is synchronized in the back end of the ERP system that provides some business insights to you as a business owner, whether you're using it from a forecasting perspective, anything from a marketing. Maybe everyone who goes into your website pops in, pulls in a cart, gets to the payment portion of it, and the logistics bill is now 200 Rand, where you could have bought a dress for 200 Rand, and the cart gets emptied at that time, or you abandon the cart. So ERP system pulls out all of this information and says, 5 out of 10 people abandon the cart at checkout stage. And you as a business owner can go in and investigate this. And all of this is done based on data analytics. Multi-channel operations. So this is selling through multiple different channels. So whether you're selling through your own website, Takealot, Facebook Marketplace, maybe it's Amazon, maybe it's eBay, whatever sort of channel you're using, it's now centralizing that order, where you know what your sales order is, your inventory levels will be, and different, data synchronization and analytics at the end of it. Then you have scalability and flexibility. So if your business expands and gets bigger, ERP systems can scale to handle that volumes itself. Maybe it's telling you need an additional warehouse. Maybe it's telling you that you need to accommodate for rapid upscaling. Whatever the case may be, ERP systems can grow with your e-commerce website. Improve supply chain management. And I think a lot of businesses have very complex supply chains, right? Whether you have multiple suppliers, multiple manufacturers, multiple distribution partners. So ERP system basically allows for better coordination between all of these parties. So everybody needs to be integrated within your ERP system. So your system talks to their system, theirs talk to you, and you're able to manage your process a lot better. If you're running without an ERP system, imagine managing 20 different suppliers, 5 different maybe sweatshops, and 5 different courier companies. It's impossible for you to do this. Then it's payment gateway and financial integration. And this is just basically having different payment methods on your back end of your system. And then also the transactions to be viewed from your financial, finance department or your financial management system. So whether you on Paygate, PayPal, Peach Pay, whatever that payment portal is, your ERP system needs to read into it if there is integration involved. And then the last one is customization and personalization. So a lot of times online businesses, .com websites, etc., .co.za websites, they rely on giving customer experiences, something that's a lot more personalized, whether it's a customized product or different pricing or different customer segments, whether it's free shipping to a local market, whatever the case may be, your ERP systems needs to be able to support these features that you want to offer on your website, whether you're bringing in different workflows or different data, how you're going to manage it. But modern ERP system allows for these customizations to happen, where you allow for businesses to have tailored experiences. They don't have to sacrifice any efficiency within their business, and things just basically work for them. Okay, and I think that basically brings us to the end. So it's a very interesting topic from my side personally. I think when you're talking of MRP, just do some reading up on it, as well as ERP. I know we spent a very little time on ERP on the broader base system, but it all works hand in hand. So do some reading up, especially on MRP and ERP, and how it functions in different industries. I think that will be a very nice starting point. Okay. Is there any questions for me? Nothing. Okay. You guys enjoy your Heritage Day, a blessed Heritage Day, and we will chat soon. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Bye.
Bye.